So where does JavaScript go in the HTML, and what do the terms event, function, and output mean? In HTML, JavaScript is inserted between the opening and closing script tags. It can also be coded in a separate file and then linked, similar to how CSS style sheets are linked. It can also be directly included in the opening tag, as we did in our examples yesterday. For all the buttons, we stuck just in the opening tag. We wrote on click equals, and then our JavaScript is right there. Most often, we will use the opening and closing script tags. So where do you place the script tags? The script tags can be placed pretty much anywhere. You can put them in the head, the body, or both. Okay. If an external file is used, the script tags are going to look like this. It's just going to be the opening script tag with the source attribute, the file name. You should also include, like, if you need to go in a folder or up or down, just like before for all your other files that we've linked to. .js, and then there's just nothing in here, and then we're a closing script tag. The script tags are not in a JavaScript file, so when you use Notepad++, you start a new file and you say it's going to be coded in JavaScript, you don't start with a script opening and closing script tag. You just put your JavaScript, what's normally between the two, goes in the file, and that's it. It is conventional to place your JavaScript tags just before the closing body tag. Now, in these examples that I'm going to show you, that's not going to happen because I try to put one in the head for practice, because I show you how to put it in the head section, and then I try to put the other ones just right next to the code so you can kind of see the JavaScript and the code together. But it is a best practice to put them just before the closing tags. Okay. The reason for this is that the HTML loads from top to bottom. The head loads first, then the body, and then everything inside the body. If we put our JavaScript links in the head section, the entire JavaScript file will load before loading any of the HTML, which can cause a few problems. First, if you have code in your JavaScript that alters the HTML, as soon as the JavaScript file loads, there won't actually be any HTML elements available for it to affect yet, so it will seem as though it didn't work. Okay, so you're trying to say, change the element with an ID of 2 to do this. Well, it hasn't made the element with ID 2 yet, so it's not going to change anything. Also, if you have a lot of JavaScript and you put it all in the head tag, it can visibly slow the loading of your page because it loads all the JavaScript before any of the HTML, whereas if you load the HTML, your page shows up, looks like what it's going to look like, then the JavaScript loads, and then it's not noticeable. It's lagging. Examples of JavaScript in the body and the head section. So we're going to look at just the two examples for the body and the head section, and we'll come back. So let's go here. Alright, so the first one, the body. So JavaScript examples using the script tags. So before yesterday, we put all of our JavaScript right inside the opening tag for the buttons, but today we're going to put them in script tags. So JavaScript in the body. So here is my JavaScript. I have a function. Its name is body function, and then it's going to get the element with example 1, which is right here, and it's going to change the inner HTML to the paragraph change when the button was clicked event, which called the function body function. Okay, so paragraph changed. Let's click it. We've got our button down here on click. We're doing the body function. So click, and the paragraph changes. Okay. Then we can also have JavaScript in the head section. So now we're going to scroll a little bit. Okay. JavaScript in the head section. It is best practice to put JavaScript just before the closing tag, but you could put them in the head section. Okay. So here we've got a paragraph. We click on try it, and it changes to the head section. Okay. So here is the button. On click, we're going to run the function called head function. So there we go. Head function's up here in the head section. And then we're going to do the external file as example now as well. So there it is. Okay, JavaScript in an external file. So we've got example 3 here. Okay. And so now button on click external function. Okay. And then here's where we are linking to it. We used to always put our CSS in the head section, but you can put this wherever you want. Again, probably right before the the end of your document's the best spot, but I'm putting them near each other so we can look at them. So on click, we're going to run this function, and this is where that function is located. It's in this lesson 2 examples file. So click on try it. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. That was the head section example. External file. There we go, and it changed. Okay, so now we're going to go back and look at some more of the notes. Alright, JavaScript functions and events. So a JavaScript function is a block of JavaScript code that can be executed when called for. Functions can be called when an event occurs, like when the user clicks a button. JavaScript function syntax. So it's defined with the function keyword. You have the function keyword, then the name, then parentheses. These parentheses could be empty, or they could include parameter names separated by commas. We're going to learn a little bit more about those later, basically like variables. The code to be executed is placed inside the curly braces. So we've got a curly brace, and the code goes between them. Inside the function, the arguments, or parameters, behave as local variables. Function invocation. The code inside the function will execute when something invokes or calls the function. That could be an event, so like the user clicking a button. It could be just invoked from other JavaScript code, automatically self-invoked, and we're going to learn more about that later as well. So what are some of the events? These are a lot of times we're going to do JavaScript on an event. On change, when an HTML ML element has been changed, the JavaScript could occur. On click, which is what we've been using. On mouse over, we wouldn't even have to click our buttons. We could just mouse over the button. On mouse out, so, you know, maybe I'm up here in this, I don't know, it's an H1 element, you know, for the page, and I leave the H1 element, and something happens. Okay? On key down, so you push a key on the keyboard, and on load, when the browser is finished loading the page. In the example below, what event is calling what function? So we've got our script. And then there's our function. We've got a paragraph. And then a button. The button says on click, we're going to call the body function. So the event is on the click. And it is calling the body function. The body function is right here. And it is going to change the inner HTML of example 1 to say that. Output. Okay, output. JavaScript can display data in different ways. It can write it to an HTML element using inner HTML. We've done that a bunch of times. It can write it into the HTML output using document.write. We're going to look at that real quick. You can write to an alert box using a window alert. And you can write to the browser console using console.log. So inner HTML is what we've been using. It's simply the HTML between the opening and closing tags of an element, and you just change to what you want. Use the ID attribute, selects the element to be modified. The inner HTML property defines the HTML content. Document.write. For testing out your JavaScript, it's convenient just to do document.write. You should really only use it for testing. Why? If you call this after the document's finished loading, it just overwrites the entire document. Okay? You should note you can do mathematical computations without using quotes, but you need single quotes to write text. So when we look at our example, I just have it do some math. And you don't need any quotes to do math, okay? But you do need to use single quotes if you're going to want to write text using the document.write. Window, I forgot the T. I should say window alert. Window alert uses an alert box to display data. You can do mathematical computations, again, in that window alert box, but you need single quotes if you're going to write text. Since the window object is the default in JavaScript, you don't actually have to say window, you could just say alert. And we'll look at those examples here in a second. In JavaScript, you cannot access output devices from JavaScript with one exception. You can call the window.print method, which basically just sets up, it's like hitting Command P on your computer. It's going to print the page for you. And then you can use the console.log output for debugging purposes usually. You can do mathematical computations in there again, but you need quotes for text. And we're going to look at our examples here. So function return. When JavaScript reaches a return statement, the function will stop executing. Functions often compute a return value. The return value is returned back to the caller. So here we define a variable, actually defining some variables for one function, two of them. Variable A is going to be 2, variable B is going to be 3. And then there should be a lowercase f, but you know, it automatically made the capital because it's the first one. I thought I'd change it. So function, we're going to call one function, and then A and B, and we're going to return A times B. And I set A to be 2 and B to be 3, so we'll get 6. There's another one, function, we're going to go from feet to inches, so we're going to return inches, whatever's in here, divided by 12. So if we change the ID of example to 2 feet and 84 we put in for inches, it's going to be 84 divided by 12, we're going to get 7. Okay. Local variables. Variables that are declared within the JavaScript function become local to the function. They can only be accessed from within the function. This means you cannot use them outside of the function. However, it also means you can use variables with the same names for different functions, as long as they're only local. Alright, you're going to do lesson practice 2, but first we're going to look at some of these other examples. So, the document.write. Okay. So, document.write, and it just says 5, because here we just have our script tags, and we just said document.write, and we're just adding 3 plus 2. Now, again, if you use document.write after the page is loaded, it's going to, that's not the right, that's okay, it's going to overwrite the entire page. So, look at that. My name is Mrs. Kosi. And nothing on the page is there. Now I'm going to refresh so I can see the page again. Alright, then we've got window alerts. So what's that look like? Well, we've got the button on click. We're going to get this window alert. My window alert. There it is. Click that. This is an alert. Okay, that's what I told it to say. You could tell it to say other things. And then we've got the console log type for the output. So to see the console log, we need to hold down Control-Shift-J. So here's the console log. If I click on this, we should see this text should show up in the console log. This text should show up in the console log. Click it again. It's going to say, oh, and it's done it twice, 3 times, 4 times. If you refresh, it resets everything to the page. There's the console log so we can see more. And then the window.print. So click on it, and it brings it up just like you want to print. So you can print to whatever printer you want to print to. Alright, so today your job is going to be to complete lesson practice 2, which again is going to be a lot of just changing a few little things, but there will be some that you are supposed to try to start writing from scratch. So let's get started with that.